This is the story of Maya Jefferson, a barista in Southside Chicago, who dared to expose corruption inside the very coffee chain meant to uplift her community. When Julian Cole, the Billionaire founder, returns undercover to where it all began, neither of them realizes they're about to shake a system built on silence, fear, and profit. What started with a paper note will end with a public reckoning. Someone skimming. And it's not just tips. Maya didn't whisper the words, she etched them onto a torn receipt and slid it across the counter without meeting his eyes. Julian Cole didn't blink. Dressed in a second-hand hoodie, his beard longer than usual, no one at Urban Ember recognized him as the founder of the billion-dollar chain. Not that he expected them to. He hadn't set foot in this Chicago branch in over 10 years, not since it was just a cart and a borrowed espresso machine on the corner of 61st and Ellis. He folded the receipt in his palm and gave a quiet nod. The girl-woman really behind the counter poured coffee like she'd been doing it for lifetimes. Her name tag read Maya, and though her smile to customers was polished, Julian noticed her left hand trembled ever so slightly when she reached for the milk jug. This place felt nothing like the Ember he remembered. The music was loud, but the silence between staff was louder. No jokes, no warmth, just tension in the air like a wire strung too tight. Julian had come because quarterly numbers didn't make sense. Profits were up on paper, but staff turnover in this district was brutal. A whistleblower email, anonymous and desperate, had hinted at theft, abuse, intimidation. He needed to see it himself. But nothing prepared him for what Maya wrote on that paper. Kevin's gone. Darren's running things now. People are scared. They're cooking the books and pushing cash through other hands. I'm writing this in fear. Please don't ignore it. Darren Briggs. The name hit Julian like sour milk. Darren had been a shift lead 5 years ago, ambitious, loyal. He was never meant to run a region. That promotion was Julian's blind decision after a car crash and 4 weeks of silence from the ground. He trusted data, not people. That was his first mistake. He stayed in the store that day pretending to learn the register system. Maya watched him closely, but she didn't ask questions. The other baristas barely acknowledged her presence beyond duty. Julian noticed one of them, a guy named Rico, pocketing cash, before pretending to drop it into the tip jar. When their eyes met, Rico grinned with the kind of defiance that told Julian, "I know you won't say anything." That night, Julian didn't sleep. He sat in a motel off the expressway, laptop open to employee files and surveillance logs. None of it matched what he saw in person. No complaints, no flags, no audits. Clean. Too clean. Maya's note echoed louder in his mind than any spreadsheet. The next morning he returned for more than coffee. Maya was on the early shift. The bell over the door hadn't finished ringing before she whispered, "You're not really here to train, are you?" He raised an eyebrow, impressed. "And you're not just a barista." She took a deep breath. "I need to show you something. But if I do, you don't get to disappear." That was the first moment Julian Cole, CEO, founder, and former street kid, felt something shift. Not just in the store, but in him. Because Maya wasn't asking for help. She was challenging him. And it had been a long time since anyone had looked him in the eye without fear or admiration, just raw, defiant expectation. She reached beneath the counter and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Read this on your own time. It's every lie they've fed you backed up. And if you're real, you'll do more than nod." Julian took it without a word. As he walked out, the door closed behind him like a seal breaking. He didn't look back. But that night, when he unfolded her notes and saw receipts taped beside employee time cards that didn't match names, forged hours, slashed cash, rerouted through fake supplier invoices, he realized she wasn't just telling the truth. She was the truth, and someone was going to try to silence her. Julian didn't go back to the motel that night. He sat in his rental car, engine off, watching Urban Ember through the rain-specked windshield. The wipers ticked every few seconds like a clock counting down to something inevitable. Maya's packet lay open on the passenger seat, the taped receipts flapping faintly every time a breeze pushed through the cracked window. Names, timesheets, order logs that didn't match deliveries. And most damning, a supplier called Northfield Staples LLC paid over $12,000 in the last month for packaging materials, yet no cups or lids ever arrived. He knew that name. He'd never approved them. Julian's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't just local corruption. Someone had built an alternate accounting channel inside his own company, and no one upstairs had noticed. Or worse, someone had noticed and chosen to look away. The streetlights flickered, as if on cue. Inside the store, Maya wiped down a table, glancing outside. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she was. Tired. Guarded. He remembered that look. It was the same one he'd worn as a teen, sleeping in shelters and counting change for his first bag of coffee beans. She wasn't just surviving a bad job. She was carrying a war no one else could see. The next morning, Julian came in with purpose. "You sure you want in on this?" Maya asked, not looking up from the espresso machine. "Because once you're in, there's no plausible deniability." "I founded this company," Julian said quietly. "And somewhere along the way, I lost it." That's when Maya told him everything. Darren Briggs, now regional manager, had moved in after Kevin's sudden resignation 3 months ago. Almost immediately, things shifted. Tips went missing. Staff who asked questions got worse shifts, or none at all. Maya had stayed silent at first. She had a son, Malik, age 7. She couldn't risk losing her job. But when her co-worker Lena was fired after catching Darren pocketing cash from a fake delivery, Maya knew someone had to speak. And then came the night. She was locking up when Darren cornered her in the break room, pretending to ask about her closing report. He leaned too close, said too little with too much weight. "You're smart," he told her. "You know when to keep quiet. If not for you, think about Malik." That was when fear stopped being a warning and became fuel. She started documenting everything from that moment forward. Julian listened in silence, his jaw clenched. "You got any of that on tape?" Audio, Maya said. "One of those old-school recorders. I'll show you." That afternoon in the back alley behind Urban Ember, Maya played him the recording. Darren's voice was unmistakable, smooth, smug, and specific. "No one upstairs cares, Maya. They look at numbers, and we're giving them what they want. So unless you're planning to start a war, you'll shut up and keep pouring lattes." Julian closed his eyes. She asked, "You still think this can be fixed with a boardroom memo?" "No," he said. "But I know how to start a war." By nightfall, Julian had called in Carla Liu, his former college friend, and now a sharp, uncompromising lawyer who ran a non-profit legal aid for workplace abuse cases. Carla didn't blink when Julian told her everything. "Get me copies. I want every receipt, every audio file, every name," she said. "And I'll start with an injunction and media buffer. But you need bait. Something public." Julian hesitated. "You mean?" "Maya. She's already risked everything," Carla replied. "If she's in, we make this bulletproof." Later that night, sitting on crates in the stockroom, Julian asked Maya for more than evidence. He asked for her trust. She looked at him, long and hard. "You're not who I thought you were." "I'm not who I wanted to be," he admitted. "I'll do it," she said. "But on one condition. What if I go down? You don't let my son become another name forgotten in your system." Julian nodded, and in that small, dimly lit room, the war officially began. But as Maya left that night, unaware that Darren had watched the entire conversation on the silent CCTV feed, a new piece of the game shifted, and someone else just moved their night. The next morning, Darren Briggs smiled too easily. He stood by the espresso machine chatting with Rico, but his eyes tracked Maya the moment she walked in. "Morning, superstar," he said, voice slick, like oil on wet pavement. Maya froze. Her instincts screamed, but her face stayed neutral. She walked past him, like she didn't hear a word. But inside she knew. He'd seen something, or sensed something. That wasn't a casual smirk. That was a warning. In the stockroom, she whispered to Julian, "He knows." Julian didn't flinch. "We move faster then." The plan had already been set in motion. Carla had compiled all preliminary evidence and forwarded a summary to the Department of Labor under anonymous whistleblower protection. But Julian wanted this to go beyond paper. He wanted it caught in action. That meant one thing: baiting Darren into a transaction, one that could be recorded, traced, and tied directly to his name. Maya was terrified but calm. She knew fear too well to let it take the wheel. "He does these weird supply pickups," she told Julian. "Always in cash. Not on the schedule. Happens once every couple weeks. There's one tonight," where Carla asked on the phone. "He never uses the same spot," Maya said. "Last time it was behind the old pawn shop on 63rd. Before that, a dry cleaner in Kenwood." Julian nodded. "Then we let him pick the place. We follow." That evening, Julian gave Maya a mic hidden inside the pendant of a necklace, a simple silver crescent moon that caught the hallway lights when she moved. It was a gift from his mother, one of the few things he kept from the old life. When he handed it to her, he said, "Don't wear it like jewelry. Wear it like armor." She clasped it behind her neck. "I'm not the same girl he threatened." Julian smiled faintly. "I know. He just hasn't figured that out yet." At 9:18 p.m., Darren approached her near the loading dock with his trademark smirk. "Need a little overtime." She kept her hands in her apron. "What's the gig?" "I've got a short run. Delivery. You drive, I pay." "Cash." He grinned. "Always." Maya nodded once, then followed him to his car. Her heartbeat pounded like thunder in a tunnel. But she remembered Julian's voice from earlier. "You're not alone. You're never alone in this." Across the street, inside a parked van, Carla and Julian listened in through static-tinged earpieces. "Signal's good," Carla said. "Just keep her line clear." The car ride was short. Darren hummed some blues tune under his breath, too off-key to be sincere. "You know," he said casually, "most people would have quit after what I said the other night. I like that you didn't." She stared ahead. "I'm full of surprises." They pulled into the alley behind a boarded-up liquor store. A white van was already waiting. Two men stood nearby, one smoking, the other pacing. One of them handed Darren a clipboard. Maya watched as he signed something, took a thick envelope from one of the men, and placed it inside his coat. "Boxes are in the back," one of the guys said. "Good," Darren replied. "Load 'em." The exchange was swift. Unlabeled boxes slid from van to trunk. No logos, no stamps, no invoices. Julian's voice came through Carla's headset. "We've got the time. License plates, images. We're good." But as they prepared to pull out, the second man, tall, tatted, restless, tapped Darren's window. "Who's she?" Darren paused, smiled. "Nobody. Just the help." The man didn't seem convinced. Maya's grip on her lap tightened, but she didn't flinch. "Want me to get you coffee too?" The man laughed. "She's got sass. You sure she won't talk?" Darren stared at her for a long, chilling second. She knows better. That one sentence sent a cold line down Julian's spine. He turned to Carla. "We end this. Tonight." They started to move, but then the signal dropped. Static. Black. Gone. Julian, Carla snapped. "You hearing this?" "Nothing." Maya didn't know. She was back in the passenger seat box beside her knees. Darren humming again. The van was behind them now, fading in the rearview mirror, and she had no idea that for the next 12 minutes she was completely alone. 12 minutes. That's how long Maya rode in Darren Briggs's car mic, dead GPS offline backup blind. 12 minutes of silence, of uncertain breathing, of forced small talk with a man she now knew could ruin lives without blinking. 12 minutes without Julian's voice in her ear. No Carla, no signal. Just the hum of the engine and the stench of cold sweat in the back of her throat. "You always this quiet?" Darren asked as they turned onto a side street with no working street lamps. "Only when I'm in strange cars with strange men," she replied flat. He chuckled. Cute. She looked out the window, pretending to count intersections. In truth, she was mentally tracking every turn. Left on 66th, right on Langley, left again past the abandoned school. That building had a broken roof. She remembered it. That was her breadcrumb. She gripped the silver crescent moon pendant around her neck, Julian's gift, her only weapon now, and pressed the tiny button twice, hoping somehow the system would re-engage. Inside the surveillance van 2 miles away, a faint blip reappeared on Carla's screen. "I've got her," she breathed. "Signal's weak, but it's back." Julian didn't say a word. He was already out the door. Back in the car, Darren pulled up to a dark lot behind an old garage. A single overhead bulb flickered weakly above them. "Unload here," he ordered. "Why me?" Maya asked, heart pounding, as she stepped out. "You want to earn that cash or not?" She opened the trunk slowly. Her fingers itched to grab the recorder hidden in the lining of her jacket, but she couldn't risk it. Not yet. She lifted one of the boxes. It was heavy. No markings, just tape and silence. Darren lit a cigarette and leaned against the wall. "You know I admire you." "Do you?" she said, not even bothering to sound curious. "Yeah, you've got edge. But you're smart enough to survive. And that's rare, especially around here." He took a drag, exhaled. "People like us. We don't change systems. We survive them." Maya turned box, still in her arms. "You think I want to survive this? I want to outlive it." Darren laughed. "Same thing." She dropped the box hard at his feet, let it thud on the cracked concrete. "No, it's not." At that moment, Julian arrived, parking a block away, and approaching on foot with Carla behind him. She had the body cam live. Julian carried nothing but resolve. As he stepped into the dim lot, Maya saw him, his silhouette backlit by a passing car's headlights and something in her chest unknotted. Darren noticed him too, squinting. "You're not supposed to be here," he said slowly. Julian stopped 3 feet from him. "Neither are you." Darren's jaw tensed. "You have no idea what you're walking into." "I built this place," Julian said. "I know every bolt and board." But somewhere along the way, it stopped being mine. "Then leave," Darren snapped. "Look the other way like everyone else. That's what you people do in suits." Julian's voice stayed steady. "I don't wear that suit anymore." From her coat, Carla stepped forward and flicked on a small cam light. It cast a beam straight into Darren's face. "This entire interaction is being recorded," she announced, "including audio and visual evidence of illegal off-book transactions, coercion, and threats to employees." Darren looked between them and laughed, almost like it relieved him. "You think this is new? You think I'm the only one?" Maya narrowed her eyes. "Then, let's clean house." In a flash of fury, Darren lunged not at Julian, but toward Maya. But Julian moved first. A single shoulder shove knocked Darren off balance. Maya didn't flinch. She stood still, hand on her pendant, eyes locked. Sirens. Blue lights spilled across the alley like water. Darren froze. 4 unmarked cars pulled in like chess pieces, closing in. "Game's over," Julian said. But as officers cuffed Darren and loaded the boxes into evidence vans, one of them approached Julian quietly. "There's something you should see," he said, holding out a second clipboard found in the trunk. Julian took it and frowned. It wasn't just Darren's signature. It had 3 others. One of them was a name Julian knew far too well. And just like that, the war Maya and Julian thought they had won was just one battle in a system built far deeper than either of them imagined. Julian stared at the clipboard like it had slapped him. 3 names, 3 signatures. Only one mattered right now. Charles Denham, Senior VP of Supply Chain at Urban Ember, his company. His former mentor. The man who'd once taught him how to scale ethically, how to measure growth by impact, not margins. And now, his name sat right next to Darren's, authorizing a ghost vendor, validating payments to Northfield Staples LLC, the fake supplier tied to everything Maya had uncovered. Julian felt a chill crawl up his spine, despite the heat of the police lights still flashing behind him. Maya walked over, eyes scanning the document. "You recognize it?" He nodded slowly. "I trusted him. He vouched for Darren. He signed off on all of this." "Then this doesn't end here," she said softly. "This goes up." Julian turned to Carla. We need to widen the scope. Subpoena every Northfield transaction. Now. Carla didn't hesitate. I've already pinged the data analyst. We'll have the trails mapped in 24 hours. But Maya didn't look relieved. She looked still. She crossed her arms tightly, her gaze fixed not on Julian or Carla, but on the back of the police cruiser where Darren sat cuffed and grinning. Not out of madness, but smugness. Like he knew something they didn't. Like he was still holding a card no one had flipped. He's too calm, she muttered. He thinks someone's going to clean this up for him. Julian swallowed hard. And maybe someone will try. The next day, the story hit the Chicago Ledger. Whistleblower exposes corruption. Inside beloved coffee chain. An anonymous employee, in collaboration with founder Julian Cole, has exposed a laundering and labor exploitation scheme involving regional leadership. One suspect has been arrested, but internal documents suggest higher executives may also be implicated. The article spread like fire. Maya watched it unfold from her apartment. Malik curled beside her, watching cartoons with the volume low. She couldn't stop scrolling. Comments were a mix of outrage, disbelief, and support. And then, the calls started. Not to her. To Julian. The board. Investors. PR reps. Pull back your statement, one demanded. Say it's a rogue branch, another insisted. Stop the bleeding, or we'll move for a vote. Julian stood in his home office wood floors, bookshelves full of unread titles, and listened to threats from people who had never stepped foot in Southside. Every word they said sounded like protection. Not for truth, but for comfort. The comfort of status quo. Maya, meanwhile, faced a quieter war. Someone had followed her home. She was sure of it. A dark SUV parked too long across the street, engine off. A man lingered outside the bodega she visited daily, never buying anything. Malik's school called, said a family friend tried to pick him up early. She never listed anyone. Julian's phone rang at 2 a.m. She didn't say hello when he picked up. They're pushing back, she whispered. And it's not just boardroom pressure. It's personal now. Julian didn't sleep that night. He called Carla then, his head of security. By morning, Maya had a new lock, a private driver, and a panic button in her purse. But even protection felt like a trap. What happens if they silence this? She asked Julian as they sat in the quiet corner of a library the next afternoon. What if it all goes away? Julian looked at her for a long moment. Then we scream louder. That night they held a press conference. Maya stood beside Julian, not hidden, not anonymized. She didn't read from a paper. She spoke from truth. I'm not a victim, she told the cameras. I'm a worker who refused to stay silent. And there are thousands like me in your favorite cafe stores, warehouses living under threats, stuck in systems that protect profit over people. This isn't just about coffee. It's about every place that treats labor like it's disposable. We're done being quiet. The clip went viral. But so did the counterattack. An insider leak emerged, doctored footage of Maya arguing with a manager months ago, cropped to suggest misconduct. Bot accounts flooded her socials. Trolls called her a liar, a plant, a gold digger. Who brings down $1 billion company and thinks they won't pay a price? Julian watched the campaign grow with cold fury. This wasn't defense. This was a machine, well-funded, organized, systematic. But he didn't retreat. Instead, he turned to Carla and said the thing he never thought he'd say: we take it to court. Not just for Darren, but for everything. Maya smiled. It wasn't relief. It was readiness. Because for every lie they threw, she had the truth. And now, she had nothing left to lose. Truth was all she had left, so she weaponized it. 2 weeks after the press conference, the lawsuit was filed, Jefferson versus Urban Ember Corporation. The legal claim named not only Darren Briggs, but also Charles Denham, multiple mid-level executives, and the parent company's compliance division for systematic negligence, retaliatory intimidation, and enabling financial fraud. The media called it David versus Goliath. But this wasn't mythology. This was Maya Jefferson, a barista with a pendant mic and a paper trail walking straight into the courtroom with the weight of a corporate empire pressing against her lungs and refusing to flinch. Julian funded the suit himself. He declined all board support, knowing it came with strings. "This isn't about saving the company," he told Maya the night before the first hearing. "It's about saving its soul. And maybe my own." The court was packed on day one. Press, protesters, former employees who'd quietly messaged Maya after the story broke. Some were too afraid to testify. Others flew in from across the country. One woman stood outside holding a cardboard sign. "I was fired for getting pregnant." Urban Ember knew. Inside, Charles Denham sat in a charcoal suit, flanked by 5 attorneys. His expression never broke. When asked if he recognized the invoices Maya submitted as evidence, he said calmly, "That's below my purview." Julian, sitting 2 rows behind Maya, leaned forward. She didn't need to turn to know he was there. On the stand, Maya testified for nearly 6 hours. She detailed the coercion, the fabricated time cards, the night Darren cornered her with veiled threats. She played the audio aloud. The room fell silent as Darren's voice echoed, "You know when to keep quiet. If not for you, think about Malik." Julian gripped the bench so tightly his knuckles went white. Cross-examination tried to paint her as emotional, disgruntled, and seeking attention. One lawyer showed the edited video that had been leaked. "Is this not you arguing with a manager in June?" Maya nodded. "Yes. He had just told my pregnant coworker she could either work a double or not come back." The courtroom stirred. The defense fumbled. But the twist came from Carla's closing strategy. She unveiled an internal memo acquired just days before the trial from a compliance auditor whistleblower. It revealed that Charles Denham had been warned 6 months prior about irregularities in Darren's region. He hadn't just failed to act. He'd instructed accounting to streamline local variances to avoid Q3 reputation risk. The jury audibly gasped. And in that moment, the tide shifted. Charles's lawyers tried to pivot. "That memo is out of context. The full audit was inconclusive." Carla walked to the projector, clicked to the next slide. A time-stamped email from Denham to the head of HR. "I don't care who's complaining. Tell them to shut up or go find another coffee shop." It was over. The ruling came 7 days later. Urban Ember was ordered to pay $14.8 million in damages to employees across the region. Darren was sentenced to 18 months for financial fraud. But more than the numbers, what mattered most was the precedent. Labor retaliation, intimidation, and off-book money movement in retail would no longer be invisible. Julian resigned as CEO the following week. At the press event, he stood alone, no PR handlers, no teleprompter, and said, "I failed the very place I built." And Maya Jefferson reminded me what it was supposed to be about. "This company will be restructured under a worker-led oversight board, and I will never sit in its chair again." Maya didn't attend that event. She didn't need the applause. She was in Southside, sitting across from a nervous 21-year-old girl in a navy apron who had just reported her shift manager for harassment. The girl looked terrified. Maya just smiled and slid a cup of coffee across the table. "You're not alone," she said. Outside, protest signs had turned into hiring posters. A new generation was already stepping in. But across the street, a man in a business suit watched silently from the back of a black car. No clipboard, no expression. The war was won. But the system, it wasn't finished yet. He sat in the back of the black car engine, running eyes cold. The war was won, but the system was still intact. That's what the man in the suit understood. As Maya spoke words of courage to a trembling new worker across the table, he didn't blink. He didn't speak. He simply watched. And then he made a call. Phase 2. Move forward. That's how these systems survive. They adapt. They pivot. They wait for the noise to die down. Then they rebuild quietly somewhere else. But Maya had learned that too. She felt the unease before she saw the signs. Corporate press releases about rebranding and moving on from past chapters. A silent shift in tone from the media, less about her victory, more about the economic consequences to Urban Ember's bottom line. Op-eds wondered if overcorrection would harm business innovation. And then came the severance packages, generous ones for key whistleblowers in other regions. Gag orders buried in fine print. "They're trying to bury it," Carla said, pacing Maya's small living room, repositioning the story as an isolated scandal, like you were a one-off. "I'm not," Maya said, "and I'm not done." The oversight board Julian promised was real, but shaky. The workers had seats, yes, but power, not yet. The board meetings were scripted, sanitized, PR over progress. Maya could feel it. So she did what the system never expected. She went public again. This time, not as a whistleblower, not as a plaintiff, as a leader. She launched a digital campaign brewed with dignity, telling stories from other baristas, cashiers, warehouse clerks. Anonymous videos flooded in. A woman from Phoenix describing pregnancy discrimination. A man from Atlanta documenting theft of wages through tech glitches. A teen from St. Louis showing his schedule, 6 closing shifts, no breaks. Julian reached out again. "I want to help." "You already did," she said. "Now step back and let us take it." He understood. The campaign exploded first among labor organizers, then influencers, and eventually news outlets that had once ignored her. A panel discussion with Maya trended higher than the stock drop of Urban Ember's parent company. Investors panicked. One morning, Maya received a package. No return address. Inside was a thumb drive. One file. No name. She plugged it in carefully. The folder opened. Internal memos from another division, New Jersey. Same schemes. Same fake vendors. Different names. A note attached. "They did it to us too." No one listened. Now they will. Maya's hand shook, not from fear, but clarity. This wasn't over. She took the evidence straight to Carla, then recorded a new video. To the people still hiding behind legal walls and fake supplier names, "We see you. We are many, and we will not go back to silence. What happened to me is happening everywhere, and it ends now." The video was clipped, shared, remixed into TikToks, news bites, protest chants. The phrase "brewed with dignity" became more than a campaign. It became a symbol. It showed up in coffee shops across the country, stenciled on aprons, written on windows. Whispers became echoes. Echoes became chorus. Maya didn't ask to become the face of anything. She didn't crave speeches or legacy. But she understood now truth has no expiration date. And justice isn't a verdict. It's a habit. Weeks later, at a small graduation in Malik's elementary school, Maya sat in the back row, quiet, heart full. He ran up to her after waving a certificate. "I got most curious." He beamed. She hugged him tightly. "That's perfect," she whispered. "Don't ever stop asking questions." Outside, the sun was warm. The noise had softened, but she knew the game. There would be new Darrens, new Charles Denhams, new cars parked too long across the street. But there would also be new Mayas. And next time, they wouldn't be alone from the start.